Well, before I wire this thing up, can you guys hear me? I'm going to put it down. But it is good to see everybody, and I do appreciate your attendance tonight and hopefully again tomorrow. I appreciate so much the Central Congregation, the elders for deciding to have this, and the Central Congregation for hosting it. And we'll hopefully enjoy our time together and benefit from it. You know, David gave me that great introduction, told you what a great guy I was, but it wasn't enough, so I'm going to tell you some more. And the reason I'm going to do this is not so you know my life story, but so that it sort of is going to help you to understand some of the concepts and ideas that I'm going to present, sort of where they come from. You know, I did spend a lot of time in business. I was going to be a teacher, but so I got a degree in education. I always loved teaching. I still do a lot of teaching, you know, in different ways, and I always did even when I was working. But I fell in love with business and manufacturing and making things and those kinds of things. So I went back and got a master's in organizational development. So I like the way organizations run and what they do. And so I sort of tried to figure that out. And as I started my career and kept working through these things in different management roles, well, I would usually found out I had a knack, and that's not a brag, but I just found out I had a knack for taking an organization that wasn't doing very well and turning it around. Now I want you to start to apply what I'm telling you to a congregation, to the church. It wasn't, if they weren't doing very well, I would go in, they would send me in and say, turn it around. I had my last job, the guy says, my plant's broke, my plant's bent, but it's not broke, can you straighten it out? So I spent 3 years and we got it straightened out. And as I started to do that, and then I started to consult with other companies after I retired a little bit, I would consult with different companies to help them out. And what I learned was that those same concepts and those same ideas, those same things that worked in an organization over here was really needed in the church. In fact, most of the things that I used that people thought I was so smart to do were biblical precepts, were biblical concepts that we could use to make things better. So as I started to do that, these same solutions I was bringing to these companies and that they were paying me to tell them, you know, would work for the church, would work for a congregation. It seemed to fit, seemed to be needed. And so I started thinking about how could I apply that? How could I use that? And then I retired, and as a lot of us when we retired, we started looking for something to do. And I thought, well, you know, 45 years of working and all that experience and all of that spending time, I should have learned something. And then what I learned, I should be able to apply. And where could I apply it and how could I use it? And so I started looking at where it fit best. And I thought, evangelism. One company I went to work for, they hired me as their operations manager. You know, in other words, I was going to be the guy that made things happen. You know, we made something over here, and then we packaged it, and then we put it in the warehouse, then we shipped it. You know, I was going to control all that. And I went in, they had some issues, started getting them straightened out, and I thought, this is going to be a piece of cake. I want to be here forever. You know? And about a month in, the owner of the company came into my office, shut the door, and he had this look on his face, and I said, oh no, I'm in trouble. He said, hey, I got something else I want you to do. And I thought, what is that? He goes, I want you to take over the sales department. Now, he said, what do you know about sales? I said, nothing. You know, I make things. I ship things. I don't know how to sell it. He said, well, you're going to learn. You need to learn. We're not doing very well at sales, and I want you to take over sales. So what would I do? Went home, ordered books off Amazon, got on the computer, started reading and learning about sales, went and visited other people that had sales departments that were doing well, said, tell me how you do it. You know, started doing all those things. And I came back and started to apply. Now, here I walk into a group of 50 plus salespeople, a couple of sales managers and all this, and I don't know a thing, and they know I don't know a thing, and I've got to turn them around. And I said, guys, we're going to do things different. And they go, why? I said, well, the facts say we're not doing well. Yeah, we're doing okay. I go, no, we're here and we ought to be here. And so we're going to get up here. And they go, well, we can't do it. I said, yeah, we can. Here's what we're going to do. And they go, well, that's not the way we've done things. We're okay the way we are. No, we're supposed to be here and we're down here. That's the facts. That's just the way it is. So we're going to have to change some things. And to make a long story short, already too late for that, but anyway, I learned about sales. Now, I've told you two things in this little story about my career. First of all, I know about organizations. Is the church an organization? Most people say, no, the church is not an organization. We're a church. But let's think about an organization. Organizations have heads. We have a head. Organizations have leaders. We have leaders. Organizations have structure. We have a structure. Organizations have a purpose, have something there go at every day. We have that same, we have a purpose, right? And then you're going to tell us we're salespeople. We got to sell. Let's think about what does a salesperson really do? You go to buy something, what's that salesperson's job? His job is to convince you, to persuade you that what he has value to you, and it has so much value to you, you're willing to take other things that have value to you, normally that's your money, something else you have value to, and give it to him in exchange for what he has. That's selling, right? We go out into the world, and we have the greatest product that ever was made, right? Eternal salvation. And our job is to persuade and convince someone to exchange their sinful life, their life of sin, and said, this is more valuable over here. Get rid of that and you get this. Right? And so it depends on how well we do it. And that's what we want to talk about for the next several hours, how we do it and how we can do it better. So first of all, I learned some things. Number one was sales drives the train. Now I want you to think about that in terms of evangelism. You know, if a company doesn't sell anything, how long would it stay in business? I don't care how much of it they made. I don't care how many of them they had in their warehouse. You know, if they didn't sell it, how long would they last? Today's August the 19th. If you were to draw a line today and say we're not going to add another soul to our congregation, how long would your congregation last?
Not very long.
Not very long. So we have to do our job. Priority number one is evangelism of souls. And we're going to talk more about priority here in a second. Second thing I learned was you have to have an environment that is conducive to being successful, that celebrates success. You've got to have a culture that's built around what you're there for. One of the things I learned from looking at this sales group was, you know, what we would say they were just very happy doing what they were doing. But it wasn't going to get them anywhere. We were going to die unless we turned it around. And so we had to make it where that everybody was participating. Some guys were making a lot of money, making a lot of sales, working hard. Some people were sitting over here saying, I don't ever get any money, I don't ever make a sale, nobody will help me, you know, not doing anything. And so we had to fix that. Think about a congregation. Does that happen? Do you see that? So we have to create an environment that facilitates or helps and celebrates success. That's focused on the purpose. We have to have workers who are willing to learn the product, the process, the presentation, the customers. In other words, it's willing to put some effort into it. It's going to work hard. It's going to do their job. If we're going to be successful, somebody's got to do the work. You know, we can't always say, well, Debbie's going to do it. Let's let her do it. We've all got to be part of that. And lastly, we had to have leaders who were able to maintain everybody's focus on the daily mission. People who were going to push us. People who were going to guide us. People who were going to help us. Who were going to be a resource to us to help us get the job done. When they said you're going to be in charge of sales, I thought, well, that's great, you know, I'm going to try it. So I tried it. And I said, we got to make these changes. Well, the first sales manager said, no, that's not the way to go. We're not going to, let's just keep doing what we're doing. Nope, sorry, let's try somebody else. They tried, you know, went through several sales managers. And finally I said, you know, Larry, if you're going to do this, maybe you ought to do it yourself. Now, I had a nice office off back in the back where I could hide, you know. Me and all the other chiefs were back here, you know. I thought, this isn't working. I got to help these folks. So over the weekend, I had some guys come in and build out in the middle of our sales room, and our sales room was probably about half the size of this auditorium. Well, bigger, maybe the size of this auditorium. I had them build me a platform right in the middle of it, 3 foot high. Moved me a desk in there, a computer in there, all that. On Monday morning, I was sitting on the throne. You know? But I said, look, guys, I'm here to help you. And they went, right. I said, no, I really am. You got a problem, you stick your hand up, I'll be there. And after the first few did that, and they saw I really meant it, you know, we changed the culture. We changed the way things were going. We started having success. We started building on it. And actually, not to brag, but that company, after we started doing things that way, our sales increased by a significant amount every year for the next 10 years. In fact, we quadrupled that size of that company in 6 years. Now, I'm not bragging. I'm just telling you, it takes that kind of effort. What if we just did nothing? What if we just said, let's just let it go? Let's just keep doing what we're doing. It wouldn't have worked. So, you know, there's a bad connotation with sales, and so we're not salespeople per se, but we got to think like one. We got to think about what we're doing. This ideal of persuasion. People don't like to buy, but they like to, or you know, they don't want to be sold something, but they like to buy something. So we got to think like that a little bit, and we got to have that environment of success, and we got to put the effort into it. So tonight and tomorrow, I call this a workshop because a workshop is this discussion and this program where we're going to focus on techniques and skills. That's going to happen mainly tomorrow. You know, Paul wrote to Timothy, do your best to present yourself to God as one approved, a worker that needs not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. An unashamed worker. That's what we all desire to be. That's what we all should be. That's our focus. Most members are unprepared and unequipped for evangelism. And I don't mean that harshly. I just mean that as a matter of fact. You know, they don't know what to say and when to say it, or how to say it. And some are even unsure how to contribute at all. You know, what do I do? They don't know. So our focus is going to be mainly on congregational evangelism, how we can all participate, how we can all be involved. But we're going to spend a little time on what I do when I'm one-on-one with another person who's desiring to know the gospel. So we're going to be talking about techniques and establishing some skills and those kinds of things. And I hope that it's practical. Things you can actually use, not just some theory, not just something I got out of a book. not just something Greg told me to say, but stuff that actually is going to help us, that we can practically use. It's not just theory. So, you have a notebook. During the course of this, I'm going to occasionally give you some questions. I call them star questions, though I have 2 asterisks. I want you to answer it honestly. I want you to write the answer in your notebook. You might even write down a little bit so you remember what the question is. And it's just for you. You're not going to share it. You're not going to tell me. I'm not going to ask you. I just want you to think about it. So would you describe your congregation as evangelistic? And I'll let you decide what your definition of evangelistic is. So just write down yes or no if you would describe your congregation as evangelistic. And we're going to build on previous lessons. I hope you've been taught about evangelism before. We're not going to get into the gospel message. We will touch on it some, but you ought to know the gospel message. We're going to talk more about how to present it than what it is. So we're going to build on other classes and sermons and workbooks and things like that. I want to challenge your thinking a little bit as to what we should know concerning evangelism, a sense of urgency versus complacency. Motivate us to save more souls, and focus on, again, the congregational aspects of this. How do we all participate and we all contribute to bringing someone to Christ? And improve our efforts because we're better equipped. We have some new tools or some better tools, and we know what to do to lead someone to Christ. Paul, writing to Philemon, said, I thank my God always when I remember you in my prayers, because I hear of your love and of the faith you have toward the Lord Jesus and for all the saints. And I pray that the sharing of your faith may become effective for the full knowledge of every good thing that is in us for the sake of Christ. What determines effectiveness?
How much you put into it.
How much you put into it. But it better be how much I put into it versus what I get out of it. When we look at a car and we say the gas mileage is 26 miles to the gallon, is that more effective than one that says 14 miles to the gallon? A little more effective, right? We get more for what we put into it. Well, when we're talking about here, he says, Philemon, the sharing of your faith needs to be effective. See, if I'd have said to that sales group, yeah, we're doing fine, just keep doing what we're doing, we would have sat there and spun our wheels until the wheels came off. It never got any better. You know, we would still be down here, we would have never got up here because we would have been ineffective. You know? And I always tried, as a business guy, I always tried to base every decision on fact. I call it fact-based, data-driven. You know, that's what I want to base a decision on. Every Sunday, when you look at the empty pews in your congregation, that tells me you're ineffective. That we're ineffective. So, let me ask you again, second question. Would you describe your congregation, again, your honest answer about your congregation, you're not going to show anybody else, would you describe your congregation, evangelistic effort, effective? In your mind, is it effective? See, strong congregations are built on purpose, on a purpose. The starting point should always be, why do we exist? Why are we here? Well, the Bible tells us why we're here. We know what we're supposed to be doing. But here's what most people think. The church is here for our enjoyment. It's here for our entertainment. But that's not the purpose. We exist to glorify God and bring others to Christ. That's why we exist. You know, that sales organization I had, why did they exist? To sell the product, to present it to customers. So our job is to reach the lost. That's why the church was put here. That's why we are members of it. I'm going to use a lot of statistics tonight, and I'm going to tell you, I hope they're from reliable sources. I got them from a lot of other preachers, so you never know. And from some books and things like that, and off the internet. And I tried to make sure they were as reliable as I could. Use Barna a lot, if you know who that is. That's a research organization. And I tried to make sure they were timely, as close to up to date as possible. Likelihood of someone being or identifying as a Christian. Look at the under 30. Young people don't identify as Christians. It's getting worse. The number of people who need Jesus is growing. So the good side of that is we have more opportunities. As we look around and see our friends and neighbors, a lot of them are not identifying as Christians, and so that's an opportunity. We don't have to look very far. They're around us. Here's some good news, though, when we look at stats. 66% of Americans believe the Bible is true and that it comes from God. That number is actually on the rise. That's good news. I think people are getting sick and tired of what they're seeing, and so we're starting to turn and even at least take a look at it. 66 are curious about what the Bible says, and that number is increasing. 81% say that it is a holy book. So it's not all doom and gloom and bad news. But these statistics do not mean these people identify as a Christian. I'm only talking about this is their view of the Bible. But at least it's a starting point. It's something we can begin with. And he gave apostles and prophets, the evangelists, the shepherds, teachers, to equip the saints for the work of the ministry, for the building up of the body of Christ. Verse 15, rather speaking the truth in love, we are to grow up in every way into him who is the head, into Christ, from whom the whole body, joined and held together by every joint with which it is equipped, when each part is working properly, makes the body grow, so that it builds itself up in love. God expects us to grow. That's an expectation. That we grow our own personal growth, but then our collective growth as well. So we bear fruit. Here's the thing. We're not the customer. We are not the customer. We're the employee. You know, the work of the ministry, he says. Working properly. See, most of us view church as that it's for me. It has to satisfy me. Well, sure, we enjoy it, and we benefit from it, but only when we're doing it in the correct way, and only when we do it in a way, you know, of keeping in mind we have more work to do. You know, our true customer is anyone who truly does not know Jesus. That's our customer. That's who we're going to sell to. That's who we're going to present our product to. That's who we're going to convince, trade that sinful life for eternal life. That's what we are supposed to do. And he says, look, you can be equipped to do that. You can do it. You know, all you've got to do is speak the truth in love, and you'll grow. I'm going to quote a lot of different preachers who've written books, and I've found some that are really great books. And also, I don't know if was there a resource sheet in that handout? Yes? Okay. So that sort of tells you where some other places you can go. David Hamrick, and a lot of you I know David, he said the single greatest need in the church today and the challenge facing every congregational leadership is to develop dedicated and convicted Christians who will use their abilities to bring others to Christ. Only then will the church enjoy consistent and stable growth. He says Christians need to use their ability. I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to show you some facts here in a minute to back it up. Evangelism is a lost art. You know, we've lost it. We've come to the point where we say, if we just do nice things, then we'll save souls. Is that effective? Or is that ineffective? Yeah. I heard one preacher put it this way. He says, we're going to preach the gospel at all times, and we might even use words if it's necessary. We forgot how to talk to people. We forgot how to sit down and say, let's study together. We've lost that art. We've lost that conviction. We're not dedicated to that anymore. So here, let me give you some more star questions. Get your pen out again. First one. Do you honestly believe that all who are outside Christ are lost? Again, that's just your answer. Do you honestly believe that all who are outside Christ are lost? Second question. Do you honestly believe that the lost will go to hell, everlasting punishment for eternity? Third question. Do you truly believe that contact with the blood of Christ through baptism will cleanse those who are in sin? Fourth question. Do you share the message of salvation with others? Only you can. You're not answering for somebody else. You're not answering for the congregation. Do you share the message of salvation with others? And lastly, do you agonize in prayer for the lost? Do you routinely pray to save lost souls? Research says only 2 out of 5 Christians believe they should proactively share Christ with others. Only 2 out of 5 say that it's part of their job as a Christian to proactively share Christ with other people. So what are the other 3 doing? Not much, right? When it comes to evangelism. See, a lot of Christians, and this is directed only at the church. Survey says, I'm sure all 5 would hope people are saved. 5 out of 5 would hope that. But only 2 are going to do anything. And what they do, it even gets a little worse. See, the status quo is what's become acceptable. And it can't be acceptable. We can't be conventional anymore. And when I say that, I don't mean departing from the scriptures. I don't mean changing our worship. I'm just saying we got to start thinking a little differently the way we get to people. The way we do better. Some other statistics. 95% of our members have never shared the gospel one time. And you're saying that can't be true. What do you think about it? How many people in your congregation you know have sat down across the table from someone else and said, let's talk about saving your soul. %5 do that. Not shared the gospel one time. We're losing an average of 53 congregations every year. That's been consistent in the 50s for the last 10 years. That's one a week. They lock the door. We lose approximately 10,000 members every year. Census, religious census, people that do this research, that's the number they tell us. We're losing 10,000 souls, members, every year. Baptism ratio is 38-1. Central had 74 people here last Sunday. So let's say that was their average, 74, 75. How many baptisms are they going to have this year? Two. If the numbers are right, now sure, that's the average, and Central may have 20, but you know, the average congregation for every 38 members per year, they're going to have one baptism. That means some are having none. More congregations are shrinking than growing. Majority of our congregations across the United States are getting smaller. And we all know that. We see it, right? The older folks always say, I remember the good old days. We used to have 200, you know, now we got 70. We used to have 300, now we got 40. See, these are the facts, guys. Largest segment of our congregation is now in the over 60 age group. We call that the graying of the church. I'm part of that graying effort. Where's the young folks? Largest segment is over 60. Well, when we think about that, it just means that we are getting smaller. I'm a firm believer that the methods of the past, the things that we used to do, still work. We may need to tweak them a little bit, but they still work. The New Testament gives us a pattern, still works. So it's time to get healthy. It's time to bring folks back. You know, we talk about older people. A lot of times we hear congregations say, well, you know, we just can't do a whole lot because, you know, we just got all these old folks. Well, maybe we ought to look at it a little different. Focus on their value. Focus on what they can do instead of what they can't do.
Amen.
Get with it. Help. Let them help. They got some experience. But we sort of write it off. We're losing elders and preachers at an increasingly rapid rate. Study said we've lost more elders in the last 2 years, the COVID years, than we lost in the previous 15 years. So we're losing elders. Losing preachers at the rate of 300 per year. That means all those coming out of preacher school, college, all these young guys that are going to be preachers, even with all that influx, we're still losing 300.
I heard that 20 years ago.
Yeah, so there is a shortage of preachers. I've heard of congregations, you know, for the service now they play a video of a preacher because they don't have one. You can't find one. The right versus left, and that's, I don't know how else to put it. Maybe the liberal congregations and the conservative congregations has caused a lot of loss. Some congregations have just simply changed the name on the door, and maybe rightly so. But, you know, that's caused us to lose people. Fewer converts are being made directly from the pulpit. Pulpit used to be the main way. You know, if we could get somebody in to hear a sermon, and this is not an indictment of preachers, this is sort of the way people are now. You know, if we could get them in to hear a preacher, we had a chance. But that's become fewer and fewer because now people want something different. They want that personal contact, and we'll talk about that, of course. 80% of resources are directed toward upkeep and member programs. This one's a sort of a sore subject with me. What was our number one priority? Saving of souls. Not how pretty our building is. Not how comfortable it is. Not how convenient it is. Sure, we have to have some of that. I'm not saying that's wrong to have that. What I'm saying is we shouldn't have made that the priority. That's not the priority. If I'd have told those salespeople, hey, you know, y'all want some new furniture, we'll get it. Y'all want better air conditioner, we'll get it. But, oh, you need some tools to sell? You need a better phone system? No, I can't afford that because I spend it all over here on this. Sometimes we get our priorities out of whack. So when we're spending 80+%, it's actually in the mid-80s, if we 80+% of the church's financial resources are spent on upkeep. Only 5% or less is spent on local evangelism. I'm not talking about missionary work. I'm not talking about how we help overseas. I'm talking about local mission work. Most local evangelism, less than 5%. How can we expect to grow? How can we expect to get better if we don't put the resources behind it? There's other resources beside money, but that's the big one. Good thing is, you know, in spite of all that bad news I just laid on you, and I did that just to get your attention. Some of you didn't get it. We have potential. We're not out of the ball game. We're still in the fight. We can still make a comeback. We can do some things. You know, Christ is still in us and we're still in Him. And that's what makes the difference. Evangelism 101 is still there. We can still be passionate about sharing the good news with others. And there's still a lot of folks that are, and I thank all the group that's here tonight. If you weren't, you wouldn't be here. So you're passionate about sharing the good news. And you don't have to have a lot of resources. You have to have some. Think about the New Testament church. What do they have? Their feet, right?
Not even the Bible.
Yeah. And yet, they did great work. There were some people there in the New Testament, I call them MVPs. Every congregation needs MVPs. MVPs are these people.
They had fear of the Lord.
Fear of the Lord. MVPs are the people that you can count on. MVPs are the people who are going to get something done. They're not going to be detracted. They're not going to stop. They're going to work. Think about Dorcas. What was it said about Dorcas? People knew about Dorcas, right? Why did they know about Dorcas? When they came to see her body, what did they say? They told all the great things she had done. People knew about her for her good work. Think about the four men who who broke through the roof. You know? You think that message got around a little bit? Think people heard that story? We're still talking about it today. Think about Paul in prison. Paul said, I guess I'm in prison, I better be quiet. No, he kept going. Think about Stephen. Think about Philip. You know, Colossians 1:23 says it was preached to what? Anybody remember? So the gospel is preached to the world, every creature. See, we have the potential to do the same thing. Christian life is a powerful way to teach others about Christ. And you notice I got a little underline on the word, that little letter A. It's a way. It's not the only way, and it's sometimes not the best way, but it is a way. And the reason I highlighted that is because sometimes we get the wrong idea that that's all we got to do. That's it. Well, those folks we just talked about had a little different viewpoint of that, didn't they? They said there's a little more to it. We got to do some. There's got to be some action to it. We got to talk to some folks. We got to teach some folks. Fundamental commitment to our spiritual existence is showing people Jesus Christ. That's our job. That's fundamental. That's the daily mission. Every day, when we get up, we need to think about how can I show Jesus to someone today? Now, usually when I would take over a department or a plant or something that was floundering a little bit, I usually always found one common denominator. They were focused on the wrong thing. They had forgot why they existed. They forgot their daily mission. One company I worked for, I went into every department and had them make a big sign with their daily mission on it, and I put it over every door in the plant. They thought I was crazy. Might have been. But at least they knew what their daily mission was. You know? So what's the strength in our congregations? Well, overseas missions, for the most part, we try to do as much as we can with what we have. And these are important and vital works, and don't get me wrong, I'm not condemning any of these. I think these are important. I wouldn't have it any other way. Benevolent work, we do what we can. Education, we're going to talk about that a little more later. Worship, we worship as we're supposed to, the way we're supposed to. We take care of our facilities. We've already talked about that a little bit. We try to, if we have youth, we try to do things with them and encourage them and build them up. So when we think about those things, what do you see that's common about that? It's all an inward focus. It's all looking at us. Now, like I said, we have to do all of those, and we need to do all of those. But sometimes we sort of implode. You know, you heard the word atrophy, you know, when someone's just sort of drying up from a disease or illness, or they're consuming themselves. Well, that's sort of what we've started to do. We use all our resources on ourselves. We use all our time and effort on ourselves. We use all our talent on ourselves. And we forgot what our daily mission is. To save souls. You know, we've compromised the original mission. What's the weakness of evangelism? And what I mean by weakness is it's a lesser priority. We've moved it down the list. When it should be one, we put it somewhere else. To everyone much is given, for whom much is given, from him much will be required. We've been given a lot. We are told to be people who are outreaching, who are going. You know, and we sometimes take the attitude, well, the sign out front says of Christ. So people are just going to come in. They're going to stop and come on in. When's the last time you saw that happen? It doesn't happen very often. What we look for is less stressful evangelism. We like the hands-off approach to evangelism. If I can mail something, and again, I'm not condemning these things. I'm just trying to get priorities in front of us. We say, if I can mail something, if I can just put the sign out, if I can do all these things, then things are going to happen. But the facts say, no, they haven't. Flavel Yakeley said this: we have brain power, money power, manpower, we just need some willpower. That's it. If we did all the things we're capable of doing, we would literally astound ourselves. We don't know what we can do. Have a try. So, let me finish up here. Why don't we do better at evangelism? We don't follow the biblical blueprint. We've abandoned the biblical example. As we talked about, there's about 90+% who are inactive when it comes to evangelism. So we miss opportunities. We don't use our talents. I had a manager that I worked for. He told me one time, he said, you know, and I use this, and when I would train other managers, I would always use this because I thought it would make perfect sense. He said, those 50 people that work for you, their fathers, their mothers, their little league coaches, you know, they have bank accounts, they do all of these things, they own their home, and we think when they walk in the door, they left their brain outside. That they left their talent outside. And I think that's the way we sometimes look at congregations. They left their talent, they left their brain outside. So they're not going to do anything. So we don't use people's talents like we should. We don't even try to find out what they are. And we don't have a practical plan of action. The blueprint is what we follow. The plan of action is how we do the things within the blueprint. You know, you ever think about something about things like conversion rates? You know, that's what I would tell a salesperson. I'm going to give you 5 leads. How many can you convert? Well, how many do we convert? How many opportunities do we have that we actually convert? Goes back to how effective we are. It's because we don't have this. So this series is designed to help us do better. We're going to provide the blueprint. We're going to hopefully provide some motivation. We're going to provide ways that you can use your talent. And that everyone can do that. You know, that individually you can come up with a practical plan for yourself. That you know how to use these methods to lead someone else to Christ. And you know, sometimes we forget to look at the easy part. A practical plan says, you know, there's probably some low-hanging fruit that we could just get if we would just try. It wouldn't be too hard. Maybe we ought to look at that first. Properly trained and motivated people will continue to be active in evangelism. See, we look at evangelism, a lot of folks look at it as a program. One time. You know, it's an event. But no, it shouldn't be something that starts and stops. It should be continued, not hot and cold. The Lord does not ever expect everyone to be a teacher. You know, out of 100 people, how many people are actually teachers? Not 100. But, and you notice I got that word but there. He expects contributions from us. He expects us all to be able to do something. And we're going to look at that. My brother, let not many become teachers, knowing that you shall receive a stricter judgment. Are all apostles, all prophets, all teachers, all workers of miracles? No, we all have our different things to do. For we are many members in one body, all members do not have the same function. So we have different things to do. But look at verse 6. Having then gifts differing according to the grace that is given to us, let us use them. The problem is unuse. We don't use them. Remember, there was a 1-talent man, a 2-talent man, and a 5-talent man. Was there a 0-talent man? Yeah. No, there wasn't, was there? Everyone got something. Everyone contributes. Everyone needs to stay on task. So we have to use those talents. And learning to evangelize is a skill that comes only with time, study, and training. It's something you can develop. Something you can use, something you can practice and get better at it. But it only comes with time, study, and training. And it's a skill. And there's skills within the skill. And the evangelizer must strive to live the gospel. Sincere Christian life. If we look at the city of Denison, and we'll just use Denison, I know some of you live in other places. We just look at the city of Denison. 29 square miles within the city limits of Denison. Right? That's the soil. That's our field. Right there. But our reluctance to evangelize has changed the soil. Our reluctance has made it harder. Our reluctance has made it less fertile. So we've got to have to get to work. See, the less we talk about Christ, the less we talk about His church, others see that and say, well, it's not important. Less importance. They feel that. And they look at us and say, well, if it's not important to them, it's not important to me. So we've got to change the soil. This is about 10 years old, but still, if you look at that second number, if you can see that, 40% of the people in Grayson County, this is Grayson County, not Denison, in Grayson County claim no religion. 40%. Right? 41% are evangelicals, 7% is mainline, and we have Catholics and others. But 40%, nothing. And many people who claim church membership don't really attend. So if we take that, and we look just at Denison again, Denison, when I did this, had a population of 25,500 people. 39.7% said no religious connection. Right there's 10,000 opportunities. That's not counting the folks who say I'm this or that, but they don't go. Just people who say I don't have any religion. There's 10,000 opportunities. It's inhumane to withhold a cure from a terminally ill person, right? There's 10,000 terminally ill people. We have the cure. But we keep it within these four walls. Here's the way a congregation works. When it starts, they grow, they hit a plateau, they stay about the same for a long time, then they start downhill. Somewhere on that downhill climb, there has to be some intervention, there has to be some turnaround, there has to be something that's done to say we're going to stop sliding, we're going to stop dying, and we're going to turn around and start growing again. And if we don't do that, then we get on life support till the congregation's gone. And we've seen it happen. So we know that's the truth. So we've got to come to that point where we stop the decline. We've got to get to that point of intervention where we start the turnaround.
And that's not building a new building. And that's not merging 3 or 4 congregations.
Well, we're going to get to some of that. You know, a lot of people think that evangelism is, hey, we're growing because we stole some sheep out of this flock over here.
Swelling.
Yeah. We got some more sheep. No. I was going to save this for later, but I'm going to throw it in right here. When I talk about priority, priority is simply this: bringing in new members who stay. That's the priority. Bringing in new members who stay. So it's time for us to get healthy. You know, we can serve in greater ways. Those MVPs come to mind that help us, that we can look at, that do the good works, that get other people's attention. We can learn to work together in teams. By that, how did Christ send out his apostles? Twos, right? Teams. We work together. We're more productive when we work together. We're more productive when we work with other congregations. We can become more innovative. We got to learn to open doors and then walk through the door. Good deeds equal the good news. That's the way we get people's attention. 1 Peter 2:21 says we're to walk in his footsteps. Christ served people, and then they listened to him. Still works for us. So nothing is more important than saving the lost, yet we throw in the towel pretty quick. We give up. We stop caring. We stop pushing. We say it's too hard. Well, we've got to start to do better. Okay, I went a little over time, so let's take about 5 minutes instead of 10. Restrooms are down the hall. And we'll start back at 7:40. Okay?
Larry, let's have a prayer right quick.
Sure.